Committee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries will come to order. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome members, witnesses, and our guests in the audience to today's hearing. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittee at any time. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the Congressman from New York, Mr. D'Esposito, the Congressman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, and the Congressman from South Carolina, Mr. Fry, be allowed to participate in today's hearing.
No objection. May I request unanimous consent that Mr. Byer from Virginia be allowed to similarly participate?
So ordered. We are here today to consider 4 legislative measures, H.R. 6841, to amend the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972 to allow the Secretary of Commerce to establish a coastal and estuarine resilience program, and for other purposes sponsored by Representative Levin of California. H.R. 7925, the Modernizing Access to Our Public Oceans Act, sponsored by Representative D'Esposito of New York. H.R. 8704, to require the Secretary of Commerce to establish a grant program to foster enhanced coexistence between ocean users and North Atlantic right whales and other large cetacean species, sponsored by Representative Carter of Georgia, and H.R. 8705, the Fisheries Data Modernization and Accuracy Act of 2024, sponsored by Representative Graves of Louisiana. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. I want to thank the members that are joining us today and their interest in the bills we are considering. I also want to thank the witnesses that traveled to Washington to be here. We look forward to hearing from you. Historically, the United States has managed our natural resources in a way that recognizes the benefits of their multiple uses. NOAA's work in doing so to protect America's coast, marine mammals, and fisheries, among other things, requires the most up-to-date science, data, and research to make decisions. This morning, we are considering 4 bills that would address critical issues within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that relate to that objective. Congressman D'Esposito's MAP Oceans Act looks to make important data from NOAA easily accessible to the multiple users of our ocean resources. The recreational and commercial industries that operate on America's waters require an immense amount of data, including when waterways are open and closed and other restrictions relating to vessel speed and fishing. Congressman D'Esposito's legislation directs NOAA to work with stakeholders and the public to determine what data should be included and publish it on a publicly available website with an emphasis on user access. This effort builds on similar pieces of legislation that this committee has advanced this Congress. I appreciate Congressman D'Esposito's championing this legislation which will enhance safety and improve the recreational experience for ocean users. Congressman Levin's bill would reauthorize 2 programs created by the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972. The bill reauthorizes the National Estuarine Research Reserve System. The program was created to provide the research, training, and education necessary to conserve and study estuarine systems. Today, it serves as a network of 30 coastal sites covering 1.4 million acres of study area, offering information on non-point source pollution, community resilience, habitat restoration, and invasive species. The bill also reauthorizes the Coastal and Estuarine Land Conservation Program, which conserves coastal lands that hold ecological or historic importance. We are also considering Congressman Garrett Gray's Fisheries Data Modernization and Accuracy Act. This bill builds on this subcommittee's efforts to ensure that NOAA uses the most accurate data in managing the United States recreational fisheries. In April of this year, many members of this subcommittee signed a bicameral letter to NOAA's Assistant Administrator for Fisheries, Janet Coit, expressing frustration with continued failures of the Marine Recreational Information Program, or MRIP. Interestingly, since this program is not used on the West Coast, there are clearly better ways to manage the recreational fishing. Clearly, it is time to move away from MRIP. Congressman Gray's bill would require NOAA to enter into an agreement with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine to develop a standing committee made up of experts in recreational fishing data collection to improve the management process. It would also develop a process for states to gain NOAA's approval to establish their own recreational fishery data collection program. Finally, there are a few issues that have faced more criticism this Congress than proposed changes to NOAA's vessel speed rules on the East Coast. Let me start with the obvious. There is no member of this committee that seeks to harm an endangered species like the North Atlantic right whale. However, in August of 2022, NOAA proposed a dramatic expansion of this rule to vessels as small as 35 feet. We've repeatedly heard from stakeholders that this expansion would cause tremendous harm to the nation's sports, recreational industries, and the manufacturing and retail industries that support outdoor recreation. Congressman Carter's legislation would do two critical things. First, it would keep the existing 2008 speed restriction rule in place through the end of the decade, providing regulatory certainty to stakeholders. It would also establish a grant program administered by NOAA and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to develop new technologies to reduce vessel strikes and develop additional mitigation measures. This bill represents the path forward that NOAA should have taken to address this issue from the beginning. I want to once again thank the members and the witnesses for their time and interest today. I look forward to a robust discussion. There's been some remarks about the language in the rule concerning the ability of someone with a ship boat less than, I think it's 65 feet in length, having the ability to protect itself in the event of weather. But the way the rule is written, it talks about gale-force winds, which are defined as 39 miles or knots. And so the hypothetical that was presented earlier suggested something far less than 39 knots. So I'm just wondering why the rules are written in such a fashion as to put people in danger for fear of violating these rules.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. I'm on the science and technology side of the aisle, and it's probably a question that's better raised with my regulatory partners. What I can say today is that I will talk with them and get more details about that. I don't think that anything in that bill was in the intention of affecting safety, and that Fisheries in NOAA does have a statutory requirement to protect the endangered species that
Right.
we have.
Well, of course they do, but not at the risk of harming all kinds of people out on the water. So this needs attention. So I understand this is not the most recent draft. It's the one that we have, but apparently there's another one. Please check and make sure that folks aren't stuck out there on the water, unable to speed up over 10 knots, waiting for the wind to break over 39. That makes no sense. So please check on that.
Fully recognize that. Thank you. I will take that back.
Secondly, the Dr. Howell, sticking with you for a second, the technology that's currently available, is there technology available today which will allow, that people can afford, which will allow them to recognize where these whales are? And before you answer, how many of these whales are there?
So the population is estimated at 340 whales at this time.
240 whales over
340.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, 340?
340. Okay, great. 340 whales over what space?
The space of the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, reaching from what point off what state to what point off what state?
So roughly off the coast of Maine down to the bottom of Florida.
Okay, so how many miles is that? Ocean?
I don't have that at my fingertips.
Give me a guess.
1,000 miles.
Okay, it's got 1,000 miles, so we got 340 whales over 1,000 mile space. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so what you've done is I defaulted, I suppose, to affect ships within that 1,000 mile space, roughly, over for in the hope that we will somehow save these 340 creatures. And by the way, it's difficult for me when I hear remarks, Dr. Redfern, where you say, if we could save these whales if we would just get, do something, like get all the boats off the ocean. And that would be true for almost any endangered species. Just get rid of people, we'd probably have no problems at all. Well, that kind of a standard is unfortunately not available, or better put, fortunately not available. Going back to you, Doctor, tell me, is there a technological device that will allow people to see some of these 340 whales within that 1,000 mile space?
We're currently going through the technology that's available. That's part of what we've put the $20 million from our Inflation Reduction Act funding into, to doing that through a NIFWIF grant that we will fund 18 projects. The technology workshop that was mentioned earlier, as well as this investment, is really to understand
Do
what
we have something
technologies
that works?
not operational at this point.
How close are we?
That I can't tell you right now.
How much would it cost to get there?
That's another great question. That's what the investment in IRA is going to get us.
And when will they have an answer?
That's another great question. I would bring that back to the team.
So bring it back to the team and get us something that shows us, let's shift to Mr. Strong. Mr. Strong, do you have an answer? When this technology might be available that would allow, that people could afford to put on their boats and could see what these 340, one of these whales to, whatever they are, might be.
So I can't speak from a scientific perspective, but I can speak from a boater and a mariner's perspective and the technology that we do see that's there right now. And I wouldn't suggest that it's perfect, that they're going to be able to pinpoint every 340 whales that are out there. But there are trends, and again, going back to the Waze application in cars, we believe that technology does exist and could be put, or not even put, the machines wouldn't have to be changed. They could just be updated through software to be able to have that be applicable.
But someone's working on this. Well, I want to thank all of you for your testimony. A very, very interesting hearing, a very important one. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we'll ask you to respond to these in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, July 2nd. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. I also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Georgia Ports Authority, a letter from the National Marine Manufacturers Association, and a letter from the Congressional Sports Foundation submitted to NOAA on their proposed vessel speed restriction rule. Without objection, so ordered, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.